All right, Dr. Matthew J. Trom here. I'm going to give you a presentation on value proposition canvas. Um, if you already saw the presentation on the hedgehog concept, you've seen this slide, but of course, we only talked about internal values. So the value proposition canvas is an articulation of the values of your company, but the external facing values, right? So these are things that you want to articulate as being important. Um, to you because they're important to your customer. They're designed to drive your customer to buy your product and to engage with you as a company. And the way that we articulate those external values is using a model called the value proposition canvas. Um, so there are kind of lean startup canvases that allow you to kind of develop all of the different aspects and attributes of a whole startup company. It's a little bit beyond the scope of an engineering design class. Typically, we're just creating products, not building whole companies. There are some exceptions, but at least the bulk of the class is just working on making products. And so what I've done is kind of distilled down the overall lean startup canvas to something that's a little more tractable, I think relevant to what a design engineer needs to think about. And this is the value proposition canvas, which essentially just has two components, and they're shown here. So there's the customer profile, which is this kind of orange circle on the right. And then there's the product value proposition, which is this blue square on the left. And each one of these elements has kind of three subcomponents. And the three subcomponents all kind of overlap and feed into each other, which we'll see in a second. And that's by design, right? Because essentially what you're doing with this is putting yourself in the mindset of a customer, following the customer profile, and then using that impression of kind of the customer's gains, pains, and jobs to figure out what the value proposition is for your product, basically how it helps the customer to get out of a painful situation with gain creators, pain relievers, and products and services that your company offers. Um, so this is a proposition for how you're going to satisfy the needs of your customer. And this is typically used to generate a sales pitch, which gets shared by the customer. In mechanical engineering design, groups will produce at the end of the semester a 90-second elevator pitch that essentially sells their product to a customer, user, client. And the way that you figure out what goes in that elevator pitch is to look back at your value proposition canvas. So that's how this activity informs kind of a later step in the process. Okay, so let's talk about the customer profile. As I mentioned, there's kind of three sections, and you have to fill out each one of those sections from the perspective of the customer, right? So you want to think about what the customer is experiencing, put yourself in their shoes, and then answer questions, these three questions. So the first one is how would a perfect solution to the customer's problem positively affect their life? The second one is the customer's pains, which is without the solution, in what ways is the customer currently suffering? And the third one is the jobs, customer jobs. So what is it the customer is actually trying to accomplish that your solution could potentially help with? So first step is to fill out those three areas, answering these questions. Then, once you got those filled out, you move on to the value proposition, which also has three categories that now describe the product or service that you are providing. And so those three categories which you fill out are first, gain creators. So this is how specifically does your solution create positive gains in the customer's life? Second one is pain relievers. So you need to articulate how specifically does your solution reduce pain in the customer's life? And then finally, products and services. So, what exactly are you selling to your customer, and what services are included with your product, right? So, you have to think about kind of how you're going to package your product in a way that makes sense to the customer to achieve these appropriate gain creators and pain relievers. Um, And as I said before, these map onto each other, right? So you come up with the customer's gains, and then you need to come up with or articulate gain creators that map directly onto the gains that the customer wants to achieve. You first think about the customer's pain points, and then you think about how your product produces some pain relief and how those pain relievers map directly onto the pains that customer is experiencing. And then you think about the customer's jobs, what it is that the customer is trying to achieve, and then you articulate how your product or service helps the customer to achieve those jobs, those goals, those outcomes. So there is this direct one-to-one mapping between the value proposition and the customer profile. So that might seem a little bit repetitive, but the mindset is different, right? Over here, you're thinking about things from the customer's perspective, and over here, you're thinking about things from the perspective of what the product can provide the customer to help them achieve gains, eliminate pains, and achieve their goals. So ultimately, this canvas is meant to codify your sales pitch. It's meant to very clearly communicate and to put in your own mind what the customer should expect from your solution. And then ultimately, even though the customer probably will never see your canvas directly, once you have some interactions with them, they should be able to articulate exactly what's on the canvas, right? So what's here should be communicated to the customer to the extent that if they were asked to recreate it, they actually know enough about your product that they could do that just from their interactions with you. So they'll never probably actually see the canvas, but its impact on your product and its content, um, it, it should be something that your customer ultimately can articulate. Okay, so by showing you this slide, I'm assuming that you watched all four kind of sub lectures that are represented in this series. So the first one was parameterization, and the second one was kennel model, and then there was hedgehog concept, and then there's this one, which is the value proposition canvas. Um, so the first two, parameterization and kennel model, those are meant to clarify and quantify the customer needs. And then defining your internal and external values is done through the hedgehog concept and the value proposition canvas. And what I'll say is, I know that you guys are, in this design class and you're excited to build things and test things because that's the real point of the class, and we're definitely going to get to that because that's the focus of what we're doing. But before you start brainstorming and designing and actually building things, it is incredibly important to lay down the appropriate foundation by doing four exercises, which are codified in course assignments. These four design exercises to get a sense of the signposts, right? The direction that you're going, get some guidance on what it is that you're trying to achieve, so that you don't spend a lot of time going down one pathway and then realizing, oop, this thing doesn't actually address the pain point of the customer, right? Or it's not packaged in a way that's appropriate for the customer to purchase it. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and do a lot of redesign, which is very time consuming. You probably don't want to do that. So my recommendation in my I'm imploring you to do these four things first: parameterization, developing your kennel model, coming up with your hedgehog concept, and putting together a value proposition canvas before you start brainstorming, because these four things are meant to clarify your understanding, simplify the problem that you're trying to tackle, and also improve your understanding of both your internal and external values, which ultimately all will work together to influence your design. Okay, well, that's the end of this presentation on value proposition canvas. Thank you for your time and attention.